My sister humiliated me at my baby shower because of my infertility. Little did they know I was pregnant at that moment. 2 months ago, my husband Jason and I received the most beautiful surprise. We found out we were expecting a baby. You might wonder why this is so important. And the reason is that, for the past 2 years, we've had a difficult journey trying to start a family. It wasn't easy to get pregnant. At one point, I did get pregnant, but unfortunately, I had a miscarriage. After the miscarriage, we decided to stop actively trying to have a baby. We felt defeated because it seemed like the universe didn't want us to have a baby, or at least not now. So we decided to leave things up to the universe and focus on other aspects of our lives. But in the end, the universe showed us it had a plan for us, just not on the timeline we expected. 2 months ago, I woke up feeling a little strange. I felt heavier than usual, and the nausea hit me pretty hard. It was like the classic morning sickness you always hear about. At first, I thought it could be just a cold or something I ate, but then a small thought crossed my mind. Could I be pregnant? I decided to take a pregnancy test just to be sure. When I saw the positive result, wow, it was a huge surprise. I couldn't believe what I was seeing because we had already accepted that this wouldn't happen. Jason and I were overwhelmed with joy. We were smiling, crying, and just enjoying the news. Since then, we haven't stopped talking about it, and there's so much to plan. We're so happy that this dream of ours is finally coming true. Although we're excited, we decided to keep the news to ourselves for now since it's still very early in the pregnancy, just 2 months. We want to be cautious. We've made the mistake before of sharing the news only to suffer a miscarriage later. It's hard not just going through that, but having to tell others who knew I was pregnant. As for family, Jason doesn't keep in touch with his family because they have always been very toxic. He decided to cut ties with them for his own mental peace, and I completely support him in that. So the only family we have is mine. Even though my family is supportive and loving, we are still waiting to tell them. Another reason I've been waiting to announce my pregnancy is that this week was my sister's baby shower. My younger sister, Brooke, is also pregnant with her first child, and like us, she's thrilled about becoming a mother. It's been wonderful to see her so happy, and it's clear that this is a very special time for her. My parents are excited too, since this will be their first grandchild. Everyone has been focused on Brooke's pregnancy, and honestly, I didn't want to take any attention away from her big moment. Brooke can be a bit sensitive about attention, and I completely understand that. She has always liked her moments to be celebrated without distractions, and this baby shower was one of those moments. If this is important for her, I can keep this news to myself for a while longer and reveal it later. It won't hurt to wait. Besides the reason I mentioned for the baby shower, Brooke trusted me to plan the entire event. She gave me the responsibility to create something specific for her with the ideas she had in mind. She sent me countless Pinterest boards, photos, and ideas for the themes and decorations she wanted. It was clear she had a dream for the baby shower, and I was determined to make it a reality for her. I had some difficult ideas to carry out, but being my sister, I went the extra mile. It took a lot of time, effort, and energy, but I didn't mind. When the big day came, I was there early since there were still a few details to sort out to ensure everything was just right. I was running around because I don't have much experience with these things, so I compensated with hard work. I was exhausted, but I love making beautiful things for people I care about. If she walked into the venue and saw the party she wanted, it would all be worth it. And it really was worth it because when she arrived and saw everything, she was so happy with how I had set it up. It looked exactly like the Pinterest photos she had shared with me. She couldn't stop praising how perfect everything was, so it all turned out perfectly. The guests were having a good time, everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, and there were no mishaps. My mom arrived shortly after and pulled me aside to thank me. She told me how much she appreciated the effort I had put into making this day amazing for Brooke. I had also planned some fun games, and soon everyone was laughing and having a great time. Everything was going well, and the focus was totally on Brooke, just as she wanted. Then Claudia arrived. Claudia is my sister's best friend, and they have been close since childhood. Although Brooke adores her, the truth is Claudia and I have never gotten along well. From my perspective, Claudia is someone who travels with a cloud of drama around her. She's one of those people who always needs to have the last word in a discussion. She talks loudly when arguing, insists she's always right, and has a flair for the dramatic. I always tried to avoid her, because that solves many problems related to her. Since this was my sister's baby shower, I really had no choice but to invite her. The first thing she said upon entering the event was a derogatory comment about how cheesy the party was to her. She felt she would have done a much better job planning the event. I bit my lip trying to stay calm and looked at my sister to see her reaction. To my surprise, Brooke simply ignored Claudia's comments, smiling and saying how happy she was to see her. It could have been just that comment, but with Claudia, the drama doesn't stop there. Throughout the afternoon, she kept making passive-aggressive comments to me, even in front of other guests. She'd say things about how the planning couldn't have been the best. Everyone else seemed happy with what I organized, especially my sister and my mom, but Claudia obviously wasn't. Still, I remained silent for Brooke's sake. But if you know someone like Claudia, you know that a person like her won't stop there. At one point, she approached me and made a sarcastic comment about the catering, suggesting I should have hired a more expensive caterer rather than someone I supposedly found on the street. I calmly responded that the catering I had chosen was very good and highly recommended. Plus, everyone at the party seemed to love the food, so I didn't understand why she felt the need to complain. Then came the most absurd part. She claimed the food was too oily for her taste even while she kept chewing. That's when I lost my patience. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Well, if you think it's so oily and bad, maybe you should stop eating it." I pointed out quite loudly that I'd seen her finish 2 complete plates already, and she was now on her 3rd plate. So, if the food was so bad, why was she still eating? Maybe the only thing too oily was her. That left her speechless and she walked away, red with embarrassment. Later, it was time to open Brooke's gifts, and this is when Claudia needed to ruin things again because she couldn't stand seeing people happy doing something. She raised her glass loudly, grabbing everyone's attention, and stood up to announce she wanted to make a speech. At first, she talked about Brooke, how excited she was to meet the baby, and how much she valued their friendship. But then, without missing a beat, she added, "I wish I had been the one to organize this party instead of your sister, childless." Claudia was still hung up on what she had said, and her way of attacking me was with a delicate subject for me. Maybe I provoked her, but she is a compulsive provocateur and all she does is complain. I shot a look at Claudia to end this matter there, trying to keep my cool. But then she went even further. Claudia smirked and said, "But you know, Brooke, I understand why you let your sister organize all this. I mean, this is probably the closest she'll ever get to having a baby shower with her infertility issues and all that." I stared at her, shocked, as she let out a giggle and looked at me, clearly satisfied with herself. I couldn't stay silent and asked Claudia directly, "What do you mean by infertility issues?" She feigned surprise, acting as if she didn't know, and replied, "Oh, I didn't know this was a secret. I wasn't supposed to say anything. Brooke told me all about how you can't have a baby and how you had a miscarriage. I figured everyone else already knew." I stood up from my seat, shaking with rage and disbelief. I looked at Brooke, hoping at least my sister would say something in my defense. After all, she was my sister, and she knew what Claudia was doing was wrong on so many levels. But to my surprise and disappointment, Brooke completely avoided my gaze. She didn't say a word. Fortunately, my mom intervened, trying to calm the situation. She scolded Claudia, telling her she shouldn't say such silly things, especially while drunk. But then, instead of fully supporting me, she turned to me and said, "Let it go. It's not that serious." After spending time organizing all this, I was being humiliated, and my family couldn't even defend me. Without wasting another second, I turned to grab my things. I just wanted to leave. As I took my purse and coat, I announced loudly that I wasn't going to stay there for another minute, and that the baby shower could go on without me. Both Brooke and my mom immediately tried to stop me. My mom attempted to convince me it wasn't necessary to leave. Brooke, on the other hand, came running after me, visibly upset, pleading with me to stay, saying I was overreacting and making a scene over something said in jest. She continued defending Claudia, saying that her best friend didn't really mean what she said, and Claudia was just being Claudia, insisting it wasn't a big deal. I stopped dead in my tracks and looked at her, trying to keep my voice steady. I told her, "Fine, I will stay. but only if you kick Claudia out. I won't be in the same room as that woman after what she just said to me." But instead of accepting, Brooke hesitated. She seemed torn and then started to respond. Her excuse was, "I can't do that. Claudia is important to me. She's my best friend." I asked her, "Even after what she just said to me? Even after everything she said to humiliate me in front of everyone?" Brooke shrugged as if it were nothing. Then she said something I will never forget. "It's not like Claudia lied. She just told the truth. You have fertility issues, you had a miscarriage, and you can't have kids. Why are you so upset? It's not like what she said wasn't true." I managed to ask, "Are you serious?" Brooke didn't even flinch. She just looked at me and said, "You have to stop feeling so insecure about that and just accept it. It's your reality." This was worse than what Claudia said because this came from my own sister. What she said angered me. What Claudia said was hurtful, but I knew I wouldn't have to see her again, and the anger would fade away. But my sister was something else entirely. I organized the party the way I wanted, with all the themes I wanted, and this was how I was paid back. My instinct was to scream at her, to say the words that would shut her and Claudia up once and for all. "I'm pregnant. I'm going to have a baby." But I held back. I didn't want anyone to know about my pregnancy this way, especially not in the midst of all this chaos. Instead, I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "You and I are done." I reminded her of everything I had done for her before that day, how I moved heaven and earth so she could have all the stupid things she wanted, even at the cost of my own free time and energy. And all that was just for her to let me be humiliated in front of everyone and then treat me even worse afterward. Before she could respond, I added the final point. "I paid half of the catering bill, but as far as I'm concerned, you can take care of the rest. I'm not going to pay another cent for your stupid baby shower." I could see she was regretting everything because the cost of catering isn't something she can easily afford. She likes expensive things, but rarely puts in the effort to be able to pay for such a lifestyle. Since that day, my mom has been furious with me. Yes, with me. She's not mad at my sister for what she did, but for what I did. It's not like she's saying I'm the bad one, but she makes it seem like I could have done things differently to prevent everything from escalating. She also told me that after the party, Brooke didn't have enough money to cover the rest of the catering bill and had to dip into her savings to pay for it. I guess there's a nice lesson to be learned there, which is why my mom is pressuring me to make amends with Brooke so I can pay the remaining part of the catering bill. But every time my mom mentions it, I feel like I did the right thing. If Brooke wanted a party to humiliate me, then she can at least pay for it, don't you think? I don't want to apologize, make amends, and certainly not pay for any of it. It should be my sister who pays me for the effort. When you treat your family like trash, you can't expect them to do you favors, so they think I'm the bad one for making her pay half of the catering bill. I think I am for just asking for half and not the entire cost of the party. Update 1. I'm going to use this update to clarify that my sister wanted me to not only organize, but also pay for the entire baby shower. She told me that as an older sister, it would be a nice gesture to pay and show love and support for her future baby, which I understand since I don't have the money to pay for all the junk I saw on Pinterest. So she who can afford it did at the event itself. However, after everything that happened, I didn't want to spend another cent on her. I'm glad she had no choice but to use her savings, and no, I'm not going to refund her. As I said, if she decided to ask me for the rest, maybe I'd end up broke since her savings are somewhat limited. Since the party, Brooke and my mom have been trying to make me feel guilty about talking to them, calling it adult discussions. But I've been avoiding their calls. In fact, when my husband Jason learned about everything that happened at the party, he was absolutely furious. He couldn't believe how I was treated, not only by Claudia, but also by my own sister and mother. He was mad and wasn't going to sit back while someone disrespected me so openly. So he found Claudia on Instagram and sent her a direct message, making it clear what he thought of her behavior. He told her that if she had so much to say about a woman's fertility struggles, especially without any proof, then he and I wouldn't have any issue suing her for defamation. He made it clear that he wasn't like my mom or sister, who just kept quiet while she humiliated me. He didn't stop there. He told her without a doubt that if she had anything else to say about me, he'd love to meet her face to face to hear it. Apparently, his message must have shaken Claudia to her core because she responded with an apology, although it felt insincere. She tried to justify her actions, saying she didn't remember much of what happened because she was very drunk. Claudia's excuse is worth nothing, but seeing her back down because she's scared has been worth it. Update 2: after a month since all that happened in my first post, I have officially cut ties with my family. You know, Brooke and my mom wouldn't let the situation cool down. I even told them they could start by giving me a genuine apology. Although I wasn't going to refund my sister the money, my mom apologized, but it was a half-hearted apology where she later said, "But Brooke this or Brooke that." Even while apologizing, she couldn't help but tell me that part of the blame was mine for having humiliated Brooke in front of everyone. Well, that kind of apology, in quotes. Brooke, on the other hand, flatly refused to apologize in any way and even tried to take on the role of a victim, insisting she wasn't responsible for what her best friend said to me. She kept saying, "It's not my business." But I didn't ask her for an apology for her friend. I asked for an apology for what she said afterward. She also had an excuse for that. But then went even further. Brooke started demanding money from me, saying that I owed her the remaining costs of the catering that she had to cover. She used her baby to make me feel guilty because I made her spend the money she had planned to save for when the baby was born. Well, I don't care. My stance was and still is to not give her a single cent. When I refused, she made more threats just to get me to say yes. She told me that unless I gave her the money, she wouldn't let me see her baby once he was born. I calmly responded that I didn't care. I didn't want to see her or her child anyway. That's why I cut her off and stopped talking to her. Then yesterday, after days of silence, Brooke reached out to me using her husband's phone number. She began messaging me as if nothing had ever happened between us. She asked if I would be willing to take care of her child once he was born, and she had to go back to work. She explained that she and her husband had discussed it, and with their budget, they couldn't afford a nanny, and our mom refused to help. So Brooke was hoping I would step in. She even wrote that she was willing to put everything behind us if I agreed to help and take care of her child. I simply replied with one word: no. Brooke didn't take that well. She immediately began sending an avalanche of messages, calling me a miserable sister and trash. She accused me of being sad and lonely, saying I should be grateful for the opportunity to care for her baby, as if I owed her that. Keep in mind that Brooke still doesn't know I'm pregnant. I haven't told anyone, not even my own family, and I feel like all of them don't deserve to know anything. My mom, as always, couldn't stay out of it and decided to involve herself. She called me today, telling me I had to stop holding a grudge against Brooke, that she's not to blame for what Claudia did that day. She kept talking about how we're still sisters and Brooke is my family. She argued that by doing so, I would be helping Brooke and her husband immensely after what I caused. I told her that if she cared so much, she should be the one helping Brooke, because if she didn't like the idea, it was still her daughter. She said it wasn't the same because she had already done the work of taking care of us, and now it was our turn to care for each other. To dig deeper into the wound, she said it would do me good because I might have contact with a baby. That was it for me. I blocked her and everyone else who might use that opportunity to communicate, like my dad, who's been staying out of all this and hasn't shown much support. Honestly, I don't feel like talking to him either. At this point, I just want peace. I don't want to know anything about them. I'm so tired of all the drama. I need time away from all of this to focus on myself. I just hope for my own sanity that after this, they'll leave me alone. I don't want to hear any more of their nonsense. Update 3: it has been so long since I last updated here. For those who have been following my story, the most important news for me is that I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl this week, and my husband and I are absolutely thrilled. She is truly the cutest little thing, and we are both completely in love with her. We didn't know we could be so in love with someone, but here's the proof. Now, for those wondering, I never officially announced my pregnancy to anyone. Since I cut ties with most of my family, nobody knew I was pregnant or that I had given birth until this week when I directly shared a photo of my daughter. I felt this was the right way to announce her arrival. As you can imagine, people were very excited when they saw my post. I have received many congratulatory messages from my grandparents and distant relatives, all eager to meet my little one. I feel bad for having hidden all this from them, but I didn't want my sister or my mom to bring drama into the final months of my pregnancy. However, the most surprising part of all this was when my dad finally contacted me. He called from his office phone and told me how surprised he was to learn I now had a baby, because he didn't even know I was pregnant. I had to point out to him that he hadn't contacted me in all these months, so how was I supposed to let him know? It's not like I kept it a secret to snub him. It's just that no one was there to support me when I needed it. So I didn't feel the need to share anything with them. My dad was blocked, but when he wanted, he found a way to communicate. Rather, when it was valuable to him, he found a way to reach out. But when I was an infertile who couldn't give him grandkids, he didn't have my number. Curious, don't you think? My dad then continued telling me that my mom, Brooke, and some other family members were upset with me for keeping my pregnancy a secret. He told me that at the end of the day, we're family, and I should have shared such an important piece of news regardless of what happened between us. I listened to him, but honestly, I wasn't interested in hearing it. I told him that he, my mom, and Brooke could feel however they wanted, but I didn't want to hear any of that. I don't care how offended they may be at this point. I asked him not to call me again unless he had something else to talk about that didn't involve my mom and sister. To be completely honest, I'm no longer angry with my family, but I simply don't want them in my life anymore. I have more important things to take care of, priorities that matter much more than how offended my parents or sister may be. Update 4: you won't believe what I just found out. The irony of ironies. My sister needed help with a babysitter because both she and her husband work, but the money isn't enough to pay for one, at least not one decent and with credentials. So, they hired the worst babysitter in the world. Claudia, it's not like she was being paid, but since Claudia is a stay-at-home mom and rather bad at it, by the way, she agreed to take care of my nephew, who is now just over a year old. To this point, there was nothing wrong. It was Claudia they should have been asking for help, not me. And ultimately they did. But Claudia used Brooke's house as a hotel to meet up with her lover. At this point, I don't know if it's several, but that doesn't make the matter any different. The problem here is that instead of taking care of the child, she was in one of the rooms taking care of another kind of child, an older one with special needs. This was discovered by Brooke's husband when he came home earlier than expected, before Claudia finished her additional babysitting services. You might say that's not so bad because they just kicked her out of her unpaid job and looked for a real babysitter. Maybe even Brooke cut ties with Claudia and they're no longer friends. Well, think again, because Brooke knew about this. Brooke was aware of her friend's infidelities and still defended her. She even gave her a free place to meet up. If you now look in the mirror and see your shocked face, then you can imagine the look on my brother-in-law when he told Brooke what he saw earlier that day and saw that she didn't have the same shocked face you have now. My brother-in-law did a paternity test on the baby because his first thought was that Brooke was cheating on him too, and at least the test hasn't confirmed that she was. Now he has asked for a divorce and full custody because she knew her friend was sleeping with a guy in another room. She not only left the child alone, but also let strangers into the house while being inappropriate. Now my sister has moved in with my parents, and they're the ones taking care of her baby while the divorce and custody are being settled. I just want to say to you, Brooke, what great friends you have, and what great friends you defend. It says a lot about you. Edit. I think I had forgotten about this after more than a year of not checking, but I went on Reddit, saw notifications, and remembered to update. My brother-in-law has gained full custody of the child while my sister still lives with my parents. I just want to ask you all, do you think I should send her a Pinterest pin with ideas on how to decorate her room at my parents' house after the divorce?